Okay. Class is in session. Today we're talking with Jason Faust, Sarah Izaki, Travis Soklik, and myself, Emma Bussey. We're going to be talking to Jason about Heartland Paranormal and his program Investigator For A. So, Jason, can you tell us a little bit about Heartland Paranormal?
Yeah. Uh, I am Heartland Paranormal. I run it by myself. I began Heartland Paranormal uh, with just the intentions of exploring the paranormal. And the more I got into things, the more I just wanted to like separate fact from fiction.
Can you explain to us what Investigator For A is?
Yeah, I started Investigator for a Day pre-COVID. I believe it was 2018 when I did my first one. And my intentions with Investigator for a Day um, was to open up um, different locations to the curious people who typically would not have the means to investigate these locations, and prove that it's nothing to be feared. And I started with a partnership with Malvern Manor and Villisca, and it moved on to the Stevenson Building in Wymore, Nebraska, and Roberts Cave here in Lincoln, Nebraska, and it's ventured to other locations as well. But my first clientele with that is people with disabilities, whether it's physical disabilities, developmental disabilities, and then low income people who typically wouldn't be able to afford, whether getting into these locations or uh, getting into the locations or the travel it takes to get to the locations. Um,
I'm sure
and so those are like
traveling
all
alone
my,
is hard enough.
what's that?
I'm sure traveling alone is difficult enough and
Yeah.
challenging.
And a number of people that I've taken, that's kind of the number one thing it's been is that like getting to the location has been the number one hinderment uh, for them not going. And so we set up a time and I've driven the group to the different locations. Um, and it's ventured out, the program has ventured out to having kids. My day job, I work with adults with developmental and physical disabilities. And so I've had the pleasure of taking a bunch of groups through my day job to different places. Union, Nebraska, we have a place that Emma, you've been to, the Tiny House. And so that's also been a partnership with the owner there that he lets me bring groups out there to kind of explore. And a big part of it is showing that there's really nothing to fear, that there might be activity there. You might have experiences at these different places, but there's the activity is really benign. I also have a chance to um, educate the history of the locations, tell the stories, help them separate uh, myth from reality, um, because a lot of people hear different stories about these locations and stuff, and so they get to ask their questions and say, well, we heard this story about that, what's true, and that's a fun part about it as well.
Um, Another question I have is how did you come up with this idea?
It was actually kind of weird because I have one individual that I serve through my day job at the day service that I work at, and he is very interested in the paranormal. He loves watching uh, YouTube videos on the paranormal. And he asked the best questions. He's got a very inquisitive mind. He was my first investigator for a day, and his mom and aunt are uh, both very extremely interested in the paranormal as well. And I said to him one day, I was like, "How would you like to go to Iowa and go tour a couple of locations?" I said, "If your mom and your aunt want to come along, we can make a day of it." And so we set it up, and I talked. I'm friends with the current owner of Malvern, and at the time before Velisca got sold, I was friends with the owner of Velisca, and so we set it up. Um, I got it all paid for, and we went out and toured both locations. Came back to Lincoln, had dinner. You would have thought they won the lottery on Christmas Day. They had the best time, and seeing their reactions, just being able to go to these locations that they've only seen on paranormal shows. Um, they were so happy, and it warmed my heart that I was able to do this for these three people. Um, and like I said, it was one guy that's in services, and his mom and his aunt, and they just yibbity yibbity yibbity, and just kept going, and they were so tickled that I was like, I want to do this more. I want to allow people to experience this and be this happy on a regular basis. And so yeah, that's where it started. And I thought if I could provide this for people, and they can know that they can go to the Valencia Axe Murder House and know there's no demons there, and walk away just happy as a puppy with two Peters, I'm gonna do that. So that's where it went to. And I actually just a couple weeks ago, about a month ago maybe, took a group of individuals down into Robber's Cave, and I got to take a young man who has Down syndrome, that I've known for almost the whole 18 years I've worked for the agency, and he went down in there, and I said something to him. He was like, "I'm an explorer." I said, "Yeah, you are an explorer." And he said something about Indiana Jones. I said, "Well, Indiana Jones is already taken. You could be Wisconsin Johnson." Yeah. So for whatever it is, 4 weeks, whatever, he's reminded me that he's Wisconsin Johnson, the explorer. Now that he's been down in Robbers Caves, he had a freaking blast down there. He had a smile coming out of those caves. You can watch that thing off with 409 and an SOS pad. This kid was elated. He loved it.
That's so awesome. I love hearing the stories because we've been friends for a really long time. And
Yeah.
I've kind of been following the whole journey of Investigator for a Day, and it's one of those things that my heart melts every time I see the videos and the pictures posted. And yeah, I loved hearing that one. That one was great.
Yeah, that's my favorite part of the Investigator for a Day is literally just seeing the joy on people's faces.
Yeah.
Yeah. Couple other locations that we've done here in Lincoln. We've done the Ferguson House and the Kennard House. And I took you to the Kennard House when you were in Lincoln, right, Emma? You and John and Jody. We didn't get to go into the Ferguson House, I don't believe, but I thought we toured
We
the
did.
Kennard
Yes,
House.
we did. We did go.
And there's a lady that does tours for the Kennard House, that works for the Historical Society, and she's worked with me to do the Investigator for a Day at the Kennard House, and that's been really fun. There's a couple parks here in Lincoln that I have done events for Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts, and those have kind of counted as Investigator for a Day, but Those have been fun. Um, Rudge Memorial Park, also known as Lake Street Lake, and then Antelope Park we've done, and Wyuka Cemetery. And I've done events for Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts of America in all those places. And yeah, they get a kick out of it, just knowing the history and uh, running around with divining rods and stuff like that. They just get a kick out of it.
They hook you up with some cookies.
No, I wish they would. I don't ever charge. They say you can tip me what you think is fair if you want to tip. You don't have to, but I always hope for cookies and I don't get any.
You mentioned divining rods. What other tools and devices do you bring with for these guests?
I do. I have kept a couple pieces of equipment over the years, even though I don't typically use them. But I do have a millimeter. I have a couple of laser grids, K2, and I'll let people fiddle with that stuff. I have a REM pod, and so if people so choose, on Investigator for a Day, I will have the equipment at the ready. I don't mind, letting people know this is how this equipment is supposed to work. If you want to use it, it's here at your disposal, and so people are welcome to, use the equipment as they wish. But that's pretty much all I got. I have a couple different cameras, but usually people have their own cameras on their phones, and that's what they choose to use. It's a couple of digital voice recorders I'll use, or let people.
You alluded to the fact that you don't use equipment very much. Is that the case? And talk about that a little bit.
I personally, I choose not to use equipment other than some voice recorders and cameras. I use still and video cameras when I investigate or go on location. Personally, I just feel like the more equipment you have, the less in tune to your environment you are. And so, not that all equipment is bad. I think having the equipment, have recording devices to document what you're doing is important. But there's a lot of people out there that have so much stuff. I feel like they're paying so much attention to cameras and meters and all this other stuff that they might miss something that's very significant right in front of them because they're trying to see something on their SLS or other devices. And so when I go in, I I have a couple cameras that are a little bit more fancy that have IR capabilities and whatnot, but my footage would never make it onto anything fancy because a lot of times I'm recording, but I'm not looking at the screen. So it's like, the producers of the Blair Witch Project would be going, good God, this guy's footage will make me vomit, So it's like that. I've had to learn to use tripods and camera sticks and stuff. So when I'm stopped, I have one camera stick that it helps me that I'll put it on the ground, and that way my camera's not doing this shit every which way. But yeah, I just prefer not to be in tune to equipment and just be in tune to the environment. Nothing psychic, nothing metaphysical. I would just rather know every noise, every light that's happening, so I can go and critically think about what made that light shift or what made that noise, so I can explain it or figure out what happened, rather than miss a noise or miss a light or miss something that I can either say was paranormal or could be explained.
Mhm. It makes sense too, being if the investigator for the day, if they don't have a whole lot of opportunity to do things like this without your assistance, our bodies are our best piece of equipment. Like, we're naturally programmed to pick up on all of these things. So for them to kind of have that experience of what they feel when they go into these locations, like as we would talk about it, like, oh, this place feels very heavy. I feel safe. I feel, we discuss how we feel with the energy and things like that. So I could see how some equipment could be really, really exciting to use what they see investigators using, but also having the ability to be present and in the moment in how they experience and perceive that location.
Right. I am not one to blow smoke up somebody's butt either. So a millimeter or a K2 meter, I will explain to them exactly what they're dealing with. I've been on tours where there's tours who will rent out K2 meters. Give us $5, you can have a EMF detector, and this will tell you if we're near a ghost or blah blah blah. Well, they don't give you all information that you need. That, like, okay, if your phone is in your back pocket and you start getting text messages on your phone, that K2 meter can start blinking up to the yellow, orange, or the red.
Mm.
You need to have your phone turned off or at least in airplane mode at the very least, that keep those pulses from affecting the K2 in your hand. I will tell people that if we're on location and we go into a basement and we're near the hot water heater, we're near the um, fuse box, anything like that, those are areas where EMF spikes or EMF pulses are very high. Um, and high EMF is also a cause for a lot of phenomenon that ties into the feeling of a ghost being present. You can have that lightheadedness. You can have um, the feeling of, well, hairs on the back of your neck or your arm standing up type of thing. EMF can do that to you, EMF overload. You can feel a little dizzy. You can feel weak in the knee or whatever. It's not always a ghost. There are scientific explanations for it. And so I will explain this to them. Like, don't always believe just because those lights go up from green to red that that's a ghost. Look around your surroundings. Are you standing next to a fridge, a microwave, a fuse box, whatever? I purposely want to educate people about that stuff so they are not mistaken.
Makes sense.
It's the same.
Makes them a better investigator too.
Absolutely, but it's also like the stuff with sage. I believe in Native American practices, but I've educated myself on the sage and why it works in the scientific realm. Um, there's the belief in the sage and why it cleanses, why it raises energy to a higher, more positive level. Um, but honestly, how sage works, um, you ever seen those Himalayan salt rocks or those ion pans?
Mm-hmm.
It's the same concept. When you burn the sage, it raises the negative ions in the air, lowers the positive ions, which brings up positive energy in your air. It kills more airbound bacteria than Lysol. And Lysol claims to, 99.9%. And sage will kill airborne bacteria at like nearly, very, very nearly almost 100% of variable bacteria. But it will raise the positive energy in your home by bringing those negative ions up and the positive ions down. And so that's how it works. Um, I have been recruited here in Lincoln a couple times by different estate sale companies to go and sage the houses before they open it up for the sale. And just because they have bad feelings about the house, they're like, that's kind of creepy here. You want to come in here and, save the place. So I want people to be educated that, I can come in and say that doesn't mean ghosts are going to leave the house. It's just an energy shifter. So,
The chill pill.
yeah, there you go. So I'm not one to blow smoke up here, but I do want to educate, and that's another reason I do the Investigator for a Day. It's open for anybody, the low income, the disabled, um, physically, mentally disabled. Those are my first clientele. Those are my first priority. But I will do Investigator for a Day for anybody. I don't discriminate. I don't turn people down.
Very cool. Has anybody that you've brought with before, have they gone on a second one?
I've taken repeat people several times. Yeah. And the repeat people that's what kind of started opening up other locations. It all started with the Villisca and the Malvern, and that's when I started getting into doing Stevenson Building, and Robert Cave and some of these others, because I did start having repeat visitors to Investigator for a Day. So yeah, that's why I kind of had to broaden it and stretch it out a little bit.
How does like the video and audio reviewing go? Do like your investigators for the day? Do they have their own microphone they can like review and
Yeah,
come back and have they found anything interesting?
honestly, like, I've never had anybody come back to me and say that they found anything fantastic over the top or nothing. A couple people have sent me pictures, what they thought might be something paranormal.
They just had so much fun they forgot to turn on the thing.
As far as reviewing stuff, I mean, I'm not even a huge fan of having the evidence. I will review my audio. I'll look at my pictures and stuff. If something looks really outlandish, I'll take a closer look. I'll dig deeper into the picture or whatever. I've had some audio personally that I've caught that I can't explain, but I did take one gentleman out to the Wymore Stevenson building. And not only is this my favorite Investigator for a Day moment, it very well may be my very favorite paranormal moment that I've ever experienced to date in my life. It's a guy that I work with daily, Monday through Friday, and he's blind and he's nonverbal. I've now worked with him well over 10 years, and we have a rapport, very special rapport, because it takes a while to work with him, to build a rapport, because being blind and nonverbal, you have to build that relationship. And so I know his signs, I know his communication, I know him. And we went, and I had that day 3 young gentlemen with me at the Stevenson building. And when you walk into the doors of the building, it's a large open area, and Brian has I want to say 4 church pews in that front room. And the young man that I had with me that was blind and nonverbal, we walked in the building and he wanted to sit down. So I sat him on one of these church pews. And Brian, who's the owner, started talking to the other 2 gentlemen. I was wandering around the room and I look over at this young guy sitting on the church pew and I see him start doing some gestures that he wouldn't do unless he was interacting with somebody. And so I started watching it. And I was on literally the other side of the room. Brian and the other 2 guys were 25 feet, 30 feet away. You know, they were looking at something in a display case. And I just kept my eye on my client. And it was so weird because he started to giggle and then he kind of turned his head like somebody was touching his hair or his face. And then he kind of did this swatting thing. Now my interest is piqued. And I kept watching him. He giggled again, and then he put his hand out like this in front of his face. And he held it up like he was holding somebody's hand. His hand like curled and like he was holding somebody's hand. And as I'm watching him, he leaned forward, which is a gesture he only makes when he's trying to listen to somebody talk. So he does a whole bunch of these, like he's interacting with somebody. There is not a single person in the vicinity of him. And so I'm just dumbfounded. My jaw had hit the ground. And I went over and I started talking to him and I was like, hey, I said, are you having a good time? And he signed yeses. He signed just like this. And I said, are there people here that are having fun with you? And he giggled and he signed yes, and I asked him a few questions like this. And I said, are they being nice to you? And he signed yes and he giggled. And I said, do you want to go sit in the van? Or you want to stay in here and play with the people that are here? And when I said sit in the van, boy, he shook his head. I said, stay here. And he signed yes. And it was just, he doesn't have it in him to fake it.
Right.
He has no idea of what it is to lie or do anything of that sort. So the most genuine interaction I have seen to date. It just floored me. Yeah, it was amazing. And that all happened on an Investigator For A day.
How did that come about then? If he's blind and nonverbal, how were you aware that he was interested in doing that?
I I had taken him. Okay, let me start over on that. I actually, with him, he likes going on a little different outings that have a lot of sensory stimulation, sound, smell, touch. He likes doing that stuff. And so usually on outings, I try to plan outings where I can stimulate his senses. And so like going out to Shrimp Park Aquarium, they have a room where they have like different pelts, deer antlers, different things you can touch, smell, see, whatever. Well, obviously he doesn't see stuff, but it's other senses that we can interact with. And there was, here in Nebraska, we have a not so legit location. It's along the lines of a museum type place. And when they were in their original, and I know probably Emma and Travis, you probably know what I'm talking about. When they were in their original town and location, I took a group out there, and this is before I started the Investigator for a Day thing. But I went to this gentleman because I work with him Monday through Friday. And I said, would you want to go to a place where there might be ghosts? And he signed yes and started laughing his butt off. And so mentally, he's all together. And I said, do you believe in ghosts? And he shook his head. I said, well, should we go see if they really do have ghosts? He signed yes and started laughing again. So I took him to this location twice. And both times, I think he really offended the owners. Because the owners and I got into it a couple times verbally. And he would laugh at the owners when the owners would make claims about the place being haunted, about this, that, or whatever. And he'd start laughing. And it was so hard for me not to laugh along with him, because his bullshit meter is in tune. And so after that, I didn't even really have to ask him if he wanted to go to the Stevenson building. I just said, do you want to go look for ghosts? And right away, it was just, yeah, let's do this. I mean, his yes was so adamant. And by the time we were leaving the building that day, it was hard to get him out of the building. He wanted to stay. He was having such a great time. But yeah, it started with a non-legit location, and then it's grown into he's been to roughly about 5 different places with me now. He's been down in the caves, and he really likes how sound is absorbed down in the caves. Joel's really awesome about having him touch the walls, having that loose sand under his feet. He really gets a kick out of that. So it's really cool how the different senses are stimulated by different parts of the locations.
Oh yeah. The way we were talking about earlier about our body kind of being our best tool, I can't imagine his little way he relies on his senses so much to the point where he's probably hearing things, smelling things, feeling things sooner than we are.
Oh yeah.
Cool
I
stuff.
bet. They do say that when you lose one sense, the other ones become more heightened.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that his other senses are probably a little more in tune to, the paranormal.
Oh yeah.
Actually, Sarah, when you're asking me about equipment, I've been able to take this little booger on with me as one of my teammates.
Is that Sissy or
That's
Presley?
That's Presley. And she's really good at finding vortexes and peeing on them.
That's
story
her
for another time.
That's her vortex now.
Yeah. That's a story for another time, but she did a really good job debunking that one. So
that's awesome.
I have two more questions that I want to kind of go over. Some people might think about this and be like, well, why on earth would you take somebody who maybe is emotionally or mentally vulnerable? Why would you take them to haunted locations? Because there could be ghosts that would, some people would think like demons or vulnerable adults being maybe in danger of some of those spiritual forces. So what would you say to those people who are gonna kind of debate this?
Lighten the hell up. That's what I say to
I was
those
thinking
people.
the same thing.
I-
Just shut up.
There are so many people who do need to lighten up in this field. There are people who will look you dead in the eye, who will say, well, you don't know that, you don't know that, but turn around and go, I know there's a demon here. The hell do you know there's a demon here? But I don't know this or that or whatever. I mean, I don't discount that there's demons out there. I don't discount that there's like evil and malevolent entities. But taking different people, whether it be kids, whether it be vulnerable adults because they have a mental disability, anything like that, I don't take them to locations I've never been to. I only go to locations that I frequented and know is safe. But like, I don't know, what's a good example? I'm trying to think of a really good example that I know
Well,
that.
I mean, I trusted you with my kids, you know, when
Yeah,
when I came down the second time to Lincoln, and you know, Zach and the kids came with. I mean, you took Ava and Lily and Zach, you guys went down to the Stevenson building and investigated and stuff like that. Like,
right.
I mean, I trust you. I mean, my kids call you Uncle Maui because of your shark
I
tooth
know,
necklace, you know, and you've been a part of their life since, gosh, Mia was a baby. Like,
right?
I would trust you, but I think something that I kind of thought about was there's going to be people who are like, they're very set in their beliefs and their ways of paranormal activity, malevolent energies, evil entities, demons, things like that. They could think of it in a way that maybe you're being reckless with people,
Well,
vulnerable adults
let's
or kids. So like, what would you say to them? Like, don't they also deserve to have the opportunity to
they do, and
go
that's why
into these
I'm
places?
doing it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't like if I was living closer to like Long Island, I wouldn't do a partnership with a place like the Amityville Horror House with 112 Ocean Avenue. Personally, in my research, I think you and I have talked about this. I've spent way too much time researching this place. It's a farce. I do believe there's some weird stuff with the house. Anyway, it's got such a bad rap from the Warrens. I would not take anybody there. But when people are talking about attachments, demonic attachments, bringing home paranormal hitchhikers, whatever you want to call it, honestly, when you really think about this, Villisca is a great example. So there is what 4, 6, 8 suspected entities in that house. So it's the 4 kids, JB and Sarah, and then the 2 still injured. That's right, 8, 6, 8.
Yeah. 6 kids, 2 adults.
Some people believe that the 2 killers' energies have somehow transferred back to the house. So possibly 10 energies in that house, right? Possible. I know that physics explains in string theory about multi-spatial occupation. You know, that energies can, and I don't want to get into string theory and all that other shit, whatever, but some people believe in that I believe the term is multi-spatial occupation, where something can be 2 places at once. But the amount of people that go through that house, not even in a year, in a month, let's just say in a month, on day tours and overnights, it would not make sense for the energies of that house to go home with and attach themselves to people and go home with people, because that place would no longer have any kind of ethereal energy left to it. So if you really think about what attachments and where you get attachments, where you bring home paranormal hitchhikers, is where people go to swap meets, where people go to garage sales, antique stores, flea markets. They pick up a music box or a trinket or anything that you would get at one of these places. What happens is that's grandma's music box, that's grandma's jewelry box. She was extremely attached to that item, or grandpa was extremely attached to that pipe. You bring it home, you put it in your curio cabinet or your china hutch or whatever. Now you have that residual energy of grandma from that family, and you witness minor activity around your house. There's your paranormal hitchhiker, not JB or Sarah or any of the kids or the Sillinger girls coming home from Villisca with you because you're so special that you get that kind of hitchhiker. And so I know that's a really long explanation, but that's how I know it's foolishness to believe that you're going to get that kind of attachment going to one of these locations. Even with multi-spatial occupation, you're still not, I mean, that energy is not going to divide itself 100-fold and go home with 100 different people in a month. You know, it's not plausible. Even if it was possible, it's not plausible. So I say to those people, just lighten up, know your history. If you don't trust me, don't come. If you trust me, know that I am guaranteeing your safety at these locations. And I trust the owners. I trust people that are going to give us a tour of the place. But part of the reason I make the partnerships with the people is that you can get your tour. When you come with me, you get your tour, and then you get poke around. You don't just have a tour and then you leave. You get to like look around the location, have some fun, taking pictures, running equipment, doing whatever. And then you still, you know, have independent time before you. So, yeah, people just need to like that.
Yeah. Last question. We've talked about this quite a bit about paranormal equality. I would like for you to elaborate a little bit on how you feel about Investigator for a Day, paranormal equality, and what other teams could probably do to give opportunity to people who want to know about paranormal history, science, technology, any of those things.
Equality. I
Sounds a
should
whole
have thought
nother
about this
episode.
one a little bit longer. What's that?
Probably pretty much a whole nother episode.
Well,
I want to basically kind of go over like, if you have a handicap, if you have a vulnerable disability, if you're even a child, you're not exempt from being allowed to do a paranormal investigation or do any of the research behind it. You know what I mean? It's
right.
being able to provide those opportunities for people who would not be able to with somebody else.
There's so many people out there that think it's so dangerous that they don't want kids to do it. But then they can't answer you a question like, what is the appropriate age for people to get into this?
Mhm.
Now, I grew up in a different age, you know. I mean, when I was a kid, movies still had ratings on them. But as long as it wasn't like gratuitous sex, and I mean, I can't even say that because, like, shoot, what, Friday the 13th came out in 1980, Halloween
Yeah.
came out the year I was born. We were still watching those by the time we were 6, 7 years old. We were scared shitless, but we were watching a lot of those horror movies. Now, either kids are so I don't want to say we were desensitized, but kids are so sheltered nowadays, you know. You can't even, like, when you look on social media, on YouTube or whatever, people changing words, not saying certain words or whatever, and changing words, that's driving me nuts. They can't say murder or killed. Now it's unalive. You know, Charles Manson unalive those people. No, fucking kill them. What? Just stop. Stop with the words, you know? And it drives me nuts. And that's what's happening with the kids nowadays. Don't shelter people, educate them. Don't whitewash history. Give the real history so it doesn't repeat itself. That's the whole point with a lot of this stuff. We had talked before about giving cooked up history about locations because it draws in tourists. Winchester House, Rose Hall Plantation in Jamaica, those places have cooked up histories that are not legit. Those tell the real story and tell the full story, so people know what happened, know what to believe, know what is there. But don't shelter children, don't shelter people with cognitive disabilities. And then on the note of cognitive disabilities, teach on a level that they can process and understand what's going on. It's one of the reasons I have such a high respect for Joel Green at the Caves, is because he adjusts his tour for whoever is on the tour. And it is so amazing that I have gone on so many tours with so many different people, so many different age groups, and so many, just so many different groups, and watching him adjust his tour without being condescending or belittling to the people who are in the group. So it's amazing to do that, teach the history, teach what happened in the caves and everything, so people can process it to their ability.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way it should be, you know. And so, like, if you take Ballista, you get a group in there, you get the history, and then you get to wander around if you go for a day trip, right? I like how Johnny does it. He has one spiel per group that comes in, but then they can come back and ask questions. It's up to a parent if they get to hear that history. He doesn't make it R rated, but history isn't always G rated either.
Mm-hmm.
So he leaves it up to the parents, like, you know, this history lesson could get gruesome. You don't want your kids to hear it, you might want to come in after, you know. And I agree with that as well. So as far as paranormal equality, so many people are like, we're all out for the same goal. Well, no, we're not, but that's okay too. Para-unity, I believe in. The phrase drives me nuts. But yes, everybody should work together, but everybody should realize that we're all out for different ends to the means, you know, like a lot of people are out to get evidence that the paranormal actually exists. Some of us are out for more logical and scientific reasons. Some people are out just for the thrill of it. And then there's all the little subgroups in between that, you know,
Money.
they are who they are.
Yeah. Well, do you guys have any questions about it?
Not really. At the moment.
You talked a lot between you and Emma about attachments and demonic, and I heard you classify one place as fairly benign when it comes to spiritual activity. Not that there wasn't any, but that the activity itself was benign. Do you have any rituals or talismans or things like that? Are there superstitions that you have around ghost hunting?
I do sage myself before and after going on location. I used to wear a medicine bag with different stones. Personally, I don't believe a lot of the stone. I don't know. I haven't really put a lot of study behind like the protection behind stones and how stones interact with their energy or whatever, but I have a lot of friends who swear by it. So I did have a medicine bag that I used to carry stones in that were for protection and stuff like that. But I haven't done an overnight for a long time, so I haven't used that medicine bag in quite a while. But those are the two that I mostly use. As far as like, I wouldn't call them superstition, but practices, talisman, you know, like that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the stones, that's not my area. I have a lot of people who are in the metaphysical field and they swear by the stuff and I trust them. They're intellectual people. And they were the ones that gave me the stones. So, you know, what's it going to hurt by wearing them, you know?
Sure.
Always good to have it just in case instead of crap. I should have brought the stones. Now I'm possessed.
Right, right.
That's funny.
Do you include your guests in the saging or recommend anything to them afterwards?
If they choose, then yeah. And most of the time they do. Most of the time they're like, oh, you know, it doesn't hurt, and I'll sage people, and then almost all the time they're like, "Ooh, that smells so good," you know, and like so it's like that's part of the reason I like doing it because I love the smell of the sage. It's a fantastic
My daughter
smell.
hates it. I'm like, that's why you're a demon because I don't like the sage.
That's awesome. Yeah, I always give them the option.
That's great.
It's weird because and I still have the one that you gave me from Edinburgh, but almost I think every single overnight investigation I've ever been on, because I think there was only one time I didn't go with another team. We didn't collaborate with another team. But every place I've ever been on, someone has given me a bird feather. and I have all the feathers in my shop. And I have a souvenir given to me by every owner of every location that I've ever, major commercial location that I've been to, that I've collected. But it's really cool that Emma had found a feather on the stairs of Edinburgh Manor and gave me that one. And then you gave me a feather from Ballista, but I don't remember where you found that one. I think it might have been in the cemetery.
I think I found it right at the cellar door, the outside cellar door.
I don't remember where it was, but anyway, that was a red-tailed hawk, and I have that in my garage as well. So I have every feather that anybody has ever given. So
Very cool.
I don't know why. I kind of find it as like good luck to keep those feathers.
Yeah,
I
make
think
your own
my
bird
spirit
someday.
animal is a shark, but I'm always gifted feathers.
You're gonna create your own bird someday. You're gonna put it all together and it's gonna turn a big old bird.
Jump off the roof.
Yeah. You can attach
So
it.
he gave me a starfish. I've got a starfish from Jason that's in my curio cabinet.
Yeah, I remember that.
So I appreciate Jason coming on and talking today about Investigator for a Day. It was really, really fun hearing about some of the investigations that you've done. That gentleman with the story at Wymore at the Stevenson building, that one really got me in my feels. But I appreciate you talking about it with us and explaining it, and hopefully some other teams or researchers will adopt that and, reach out and allow other people to go on some investigations with them or provide resources so that they can.
Definitely.
Well, thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Let's hope it works this
Absolutely.
time.
Yeah. No more mishaps.
Don't jinx me.